Hey guys, hope you are all having a great morning. Today, I want to talk about the biggest threat to humanity, and look closer at what players are manufacturing the end of times for us. We have talked a lot about houses, about healthcare, about stocks and crypto and many other modern issues in which the hand of Wall Street carefully works. The dangers that they impose on the world are serious, and will pose great risks that future generations are going to have to contend with. Today, I am going to talk about birth rates, in hopes to illustrate why this risk could have a serious impact and role in the collapse of modern society if we do not start doing something about it now. Needless to say, this video is not a sophisticated piece advising you to get a girl pregnant. This is a macroeconomic observation at a large scope, an extended distanced view, at how much the problems that Wall Street is imposing in the world is affecting the rate by which people have children and the various effects it will have on society. Before we start, let me quickly state that I am not a financial advisor, and that all content discussed in this channel is simply information gathered that I deem important for people to know, so that they can make informed decisions. All efforts are aimed to better understand the nature of the current market in anticipation of the greatest squeeze in financial history. Let's get started. Elon Musk recently made headlines after he pinned declining birth rates as one of the biggest threats to civilization. In his interview with the Wall Street Journal, he explained that there are not enough people. He stated, and I quote, "So many people, including smart people, think that there are too many people in the world and think that the population is growing out of control. It's completely the opposite. If people don't have more children, civilization is going to crumble." This statement resonated with me, because every couple of weeks I find myself coming across some article or research entry talking about declining birth rates. China's birth rate has reached a record low, one that experts strongly believe will shake the world economy. China is so big in terms of population that if all of a sudden their numbers start dwindling, it becomes dangerous to the general stabilization levels by which the world economy likes to be. Their Bureau of Economic Statistics released some data showing that just 8.5 births take place per 1,000 people. Birth rates fell by 4% in the United States, meaning people are having fewer children than the 2.1 needed to maintain a steady population. India said birth rates dropped below key replacement rate too. Israel, Mexico, Canada, Russia, France and many other countries in the world are experiencing declines in birth rates, and the drops aren't normal either. They are huge steep drops that have alarmed the entire political system. This is a huge looming threat that will change the world, and everyone is rushing to ask the scientific community why. Though the reasons are different across some countries to certain degrees, the most prevalent answers lie in current economic problems. Surveys have been carried out, and today I want to focus on a more recent one made by Pew Research. In the survey, 44% of non-parents aged 18 years old to 49 years old deemed the likelihood of having kids are not too likely or not likely at all. This number is staggering, especially considering that in 2018 the number of people who said the same was 37%. In just 4 years, Americans experienced an increase of 5% of people saying they are not likely, if at all, to have children. To make things worse, 3/4 of adults younger than 50 said they are not likely to have any more than what they have. More and more people around the country, and around the world, are moving away from traditional expectations of marriage and children. More than 6 in 10 participants who said they didn't want kids said their reason was by choice, including medical and financial reasons, or the fact that they already had kids and cannot bear to carry the financial load of having another. Other research performed by other scientific authorities around the world have cited rising trends like women transitioning from housewives' roles to wanting to have their own established work careers. Others have found evidence medical issues to be a huge contender as well, but across the entire world, the biggest and most common denominator was the inability, strain or outright impossibility of bearing children due to not being able to afford one, and as such, people are opting to change their outlooks in life. And how can you make it not about money, when the price of living has made it impossible for people to even leave home in the first place? Another Pew Research Center report showed that the proportion of Americans aged 18 years old to 29 years old continues to increase. The latest number showed that 52% of people aged between 18 and 29 still living with their parents as of June of this year, which was up from the 47% back in February of this year. And this report only accounted for this demographic living with their parents. Think about the amount of people that are living with friends. One of my closest friends told me how he shared a 2-bedroom apartment with 7 other people. This is a massive number to contend with, because scientific literature made it known that while living at home, the chances of you having children are super low. You can call newer generations lazy and unmotivated, but research will show new generations are the most productive that have ever been. Instead, stagnant or even declining wages, high costs for transportation, inflation, basic expenses, insurance, hospital and medical costs associated, housing and renting prices and every other expense is also at an all-time high or close enough. Governments around the world become extremely vocal about the problems, but when they are presented the evidence that the present economic situation is not favorable to people between 18 and 50 to have children, in fact, it's quite discouraging, and that this is only benefiting a small select few, all governments and politicians quickly become quiet. I have seen some even make public remarks calling newer generations lazy, entitled and selfish. Though you would think there is some room to show this, data contradicts it. Instead of having children, new generations are instead option out to buy pets, which takes away from the entitled and selfish portion of their argument. So as I have demonstrated, there are many reasons for why people are having less children, so instead of covering all of them, I want to take today to hyper-focus on one, the direct link between faster home prices and faster decline in birth rates. Again, this experiment in the focus was performed on America, so it might vary for other countries to different proportions, but I am betting my tendies it applies to everyone. My housing videos have comments from people all over the world telling me how the same thing that is happening in the United States is taking place in Spain, New Zealand, Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada and so many other countries. Let's dive into this report, which was ironically conducted by no other than real estate company Zillow. The real estate giant published a short blog several years ago detailing a link, a correlation, between the increase they have seen in home prices and declining birth rates. Because the data was released publicly, not only were smart people able to duplicate it over the years, but expand on it. The results were interesting to say the least. Looking at rents, faster rising rents are associated with lower fertility across all age groups, but more in particular for women between ages 20 to 30. Higher rent has the strongest correlation with lower fertility, which makes a lot of sense since women in their 20s tend to be renters since they are more likely to be in college or in the beginning of their careers. For rising home prices, there were two results. We still see reduced birth rates for younger women, but for women in their 30s, there was a slight positive association between prices and fertility. Again, this makes perfect sense. Younger women are going to struggle with a kid if they have to pay higher for a house, but for older women who are more likely to already own a home, higher housing prices can be a good thing since it gives them more wealth, therefore adding an incentive to have children. Zillow also found that bigger houses, regardless of whether they were sold or rented, tended to be associated with higher birth rates. Funny enough, Wall Street has been working hard at trying to get developers to construct smaller properties for people. Since many developers construct in chunks, the smaller each house or apartment is, the more apartments you can probably squeeze in for the same area. You know how we talked about people are deciding, if that is even the right word, to stay at home with their parents. The majority of people are booking it with either family or friends at this point. Well, the new Zillow research showed that the more crowded housing is, the lower birth rates are. That means that the more people that live with you, the less likely you are to want to have a kid. What I am trying to point out with this Zillow research is that the conditions by which most fertile people are being subjected to make it incredibly stressful and hard to thrive, and when added with the prospect of bringing in children, it quickly becomes a nightmare scenario from a financial point of view. Life isn't fair, but the current economic situation is driving people away from parenthood and having them find comfort in other things in life, such as owning pets and focusing more on career prospects. I see a lot of people complain about the end of traditional families and how they have always been, but how can you blame changing attitudes when you have an economic system that not only disincentivizes people from having children, but actually punishes them for doing so? While looking through all of these problems, from the housing to the healthcare, the wages, the inflation and everything else we mentioned, the only consistent variable I found was that Wall Street and friends were always somehow involved in really tearing the fabric of society apart. The greed has become so central to their current economic and business model that they are quite literally willing to break away society as it is for the sake of having a couple people hoard all the money. Billionaires in America became $2.1 trillion richer during the pandemic, and are now all collective worth over $5 trillion. Meanwhile, investing in education, fixing the costs of healthcare, fixing the credit system or even looking at student loan is a huge problem that quickly becomes partisan, where the media plays narratives and gets us to blame each other for things being the way they are. The economic problems of declining birth rates will be broad, so I am going to mention the biggest ones that come to mind. Falling birth rates poses economic challenges through less workers, less consumers, older populations, market decline, and most importantly, will push the need for automation to rise faster than its organic growth, which in itself can be very dangerous as well. There is a lot of talk about this but little to no pushback. Governments don't like the outlook, but politicians are too happy getting paychecks by Wall Street. As we continue to move forward in time, you will see less people willingly want to have kids, which will strain economic growth for decades and centuries to come. This was a very broad type of approach, instead of hyper-focusing on a single issue, so let me know in the comments if you liked it and what your thoughts and own opinions are in regards to the subject at hand. I hope to have given you guys some perspective, to have inspired the growth of some wrinkles, but the sad story is that I won't know unless you tell me so in the comments, so don't be shy and give me your thoughts and opinions into this video. That's all I have for this morning video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support this channel, I have a Patreon link in the description as well as some one-time donation links for Cash App and PayPal. Thank you again for being a part of this channel. I will continue striving for better content. Hope you keep having a great day, and I hope to see you later today on the recap video. Until then, keep on buying the dip into the moon.